Hello, my name is Pastor Kathy. I'm the pastor of Pleasant Valley Lutheran Church near Malabar Farm and St. Paul Lutheran Church in Lucas. Greetings. We are reading through the Bible with commentary. We're in the book of Leviticus. And as we found yesterday, there are gems to be found in the book of Leviticus. As we read yesterday, that if you can't afford a sheep after you've had a baby and you need to do a rite of purification, then you bring two birds. And that's how we know that Jesus was born into a poor family, because Mary and Joseph, who are good practicing Jews and did all the rituals, brought two birds to do Mary's rite of purification after she'd had her baby. So we know that Jesus was born into a family of practicing Jews who followed all of the rituals, and we know that they were not very well off because they brought two birds instead of a sheep. And I think we had another little thing yesterday that we had, just that when Jesus healed the lepers and then said, go show yourself to the priests, because the priests are the ones who decide whether something is clean or not clean. And then also, as we were saying yesterday, the word leprous might not actually be leprosy, but we don't know exactly what that word, how to translate it from very ancient Hebrew to modern English. The one that gets generally translated is leprous or leprosy, but it's all kinds of skin diseases that could be under this, like impetigo or scabies or mites or poison ivy, or just, getting, and they were saying if somebody's bald, they're clean. Being bald does not make you unclean. It's not a spreading contagious disease. And the whole idea is, what does it mean to be clean? And what does it mean to be, if you are contagious, then you get quarantined, which of course is no fun. So that was yesterday. Today we are in purification of the lepers and their houses. So Verse 14, or chapter 14 of Leviticus. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, This shall be the ritual for a leprous person at the time of his cleansing. He shall be brought to the priest. The priest shall go out of the camp, and the priest shall make an examination. If the disease is healed in the leprous person, the priest shall command that 2 living clean birds and cedar wood and crimson yarn and hyssop be brought for the one who is to be cleansed. The priest shall command that one of the birds be slaughtered over fresh water in an earthen vessel. He shall take the living bird with the cedar wood and crimson yarn and the hyssop, dip them and the living bird in the blood of the bird that was slaughtered over the fresh water. He shall sprinkle it 7 times upon the one who is to be cleansed of the leprous disease. Then he shall pronounce him clean, and he shall let the living bird go into the open field. The one who is to be cleansed shall wash his clothes and shave off all his hair and bathe himself in water, and he shall be clean. After that he shall come into the camp, but he shall live outside his tent 7 days. On the 7th day he shall shave all his hair of head, beard, eyebrows. He shall shave all his hair. Then he shall wash his clothes and bathe his body in water, and he shall be clean. So after the priest says, okay, you're not contagious, there's still a little bit of quarantine. There's sort of this easing back into the culture, back into the place in society, back into, you don't stay in your house, but you can be in the area. On the 8th day, he shall take 2 male lambs without blemish, 1 ewe lamb in its first year without blemish, and a grain offering, 3/10 of an ephah, I don't know how much an ephah is, of choice flour mixed with oil, and 1 log of oil. The priest who cleanses shall set the person to be cleansed along with these things before the Lord at the entrance of the tent of meeting. The priest shall take 1 of the lambs and offer it as a guilt offering along with the log of oil, and raise them as an elevation offering before the Lord. How much is a log of oil? We don't know. It's a measure of some sort. So an ephah of flour, how much is that? So is it a cup? Is it a quart? Is it a pound? We don't know, but that is what he is to bring to show that he has been cleansed. And of course I just lost my place. The priest shall take 1 of the lambs and offer it as a guilt offering along with the log of oil, and raise them as an elevation offering before the Lord. He shall slaughter the lamb in the place where the sin offering and the burnt offerings are slaughtered, in the holy place. For the guilt offering is like the sin offering, belongs to the priest. It is most holy. So it's not that you're guilty for getting impetigo or scabies or poison ivy, but for whatever way you're thinking of cleansing and guilt, it's kind of related. So They treat it kind of like a sin offering, even though it's not sin. The priest shall take some of the blood of the guilt offering and put it on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of the right hand, and on the big toe of the right foot. The priest shall take some of the log of oil and pour it onto the palm of his own left hand, and dip his right finger in the oil that is on his left hand, and sprinkle some oil with his finger 7 times before the Lord. Some of the oil that remains in his hand the priest shall put on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, and on the thumb of the right hand, and on the big toe of the right foot, on top of the blood of the guilt offering. The rest of the oil that is in the priest's hand he shall put on the head of the one to be cleansed. Then the priest shall make atonement on his behalf before the Lord. I want to stop there for a second. So it's supposed to bring oil and flour and a lamb, and the lamb gets slaughtered. And then the oil, the priest puts the oil into the cup in his hand, sprinkles some 7 times to the Lord, some on top of the blood on the ear, the hand, and the foot, and the rest on top of the head of the person who is being cleansed. But by that time, there's probably not that much left. Hopefully, you're not dripping with oil, although I think the idea of dripping with oil in that culture was considered blessing. The priest shall offer the sin offering to make atonement for the one to be cleansed from his uncleanness. Afterward he shall slaughter the burnt offering, and the priest shall offer the burnt offering and the grain offering on the altar. Thus the priest shall make atonement on his behalf, and he shall be clean. Verse 21, because not everybody can afford 2 sheep, a bunch of flour, and a bunch of oil. But if he is poor and cannot afford so much, and I'm thinking if you've been a leper or some kind of skin disease living outside the camp, how do you have anything? He shall take 1 male lamb for a guilt offering to be elevated to make atonement on his behalf, 1/10 of an ephah of choice flour, mixed with oil for a grain offering, and a log of oil. Also 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons, such as he can afford, 1 for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. On the 8th day he shall bring them for his cleansing to the priest to the entrance of the tent of meeting before the Lord. And the priest shall take the lamb of the guilt offering and the log of oil, and the priest shall raise them as an elevation offering before the Lord. So an elevation offering is, they show it, they say, "Here, Lord, this is for you," and then the priest gets to keep it and eat it, as opposed to a burnt offering, which is turned into smoke, which is completely burnt up and given to God. So an elevation, they lift it up and then they get to keep it. The priest shall slaughter the lamb of the guilt offering, and shall take some of the blood of the guilt offering and put it on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, and on the thumb of the right hand, and on the big toe of the right foot. The priest shall pour some of the oil into the palm of his own left hand, shall sprinkle with his right finger some of the oil that is in the left hand 7 times before the Lord. The priest shall put some of the oil that is in his hand on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, and on the thumb of the right hand, and on the big toe of the right foot, where the blood of the guilt offering was placed. So even though this person's poor, it's the same process, the same basic idea. The rest of the oil that is in the priest's hand he shall put on the head of the one to be cleansed, to make atonement on his behalf before the Lord. And he shall offer of turtle doves or pigeons, such as he can afford, 1 for sin offering, the other for burnt offering, along with a grain offering. The priest shall make atonement before the Lord on behalf of the one being cleansed. This is a ritual for the one who has a leprous disease. Again, that word leprous, not necessarily leprosy, and we're not even sure how to translate it because it's very ancient Hebrew, who cannot afford the offerings for his cleansing. The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, "When you come into the land of Canaan, which I give you for a possession, and I put a leprous disease in a house in the land of your possession, the owner of the house shall come and tell the priest, saying, there seems to me to be some sort of disease in my house." And disease would cover mold, mildew, just any kind of anything. The priest shall command that they empty the house before the priest goes in to examine the disease, or all that is in the house will become unclean. And afterward the priest shall go in to inspect the house. He shall examine the disease. If the disease is in the walls of the house with greenish or reddish spots, and if it appears to be deeper than the surface, the priest shall go outside to the door of the house and shall shut up the house 7 days. The priest shall come again on the 7th day and make an inspection. If the disease has spread in the walls of the house, the priest shall command that the stones in which the disease appears be taken out and thrown into an unclean place outside the city. So this is commanded to Moses while they're still in the desert, but the idea is eventually they're going to be landed, they're going to be in the land of Canaan, they're going to have houses once in the future. And when they have a house in the future, and it has some kind of mold or mildew or something, this is what they have to do. So if it's spreading, they have to take all the stones of that house out, and they have to, he shall have the inside of the house scraped thoroughly, and the plaster that is scraped off shall be dumped in an unclean place outside the city. They shall take other stones and put them in the place of these stones, and take other plaster and plaster the house. So if you've got something spreading in the house, just completely take out all the stones, all the plaster, and put in new. Verse 43, if the disease breaks out again in the house, after he has taken out the stones and scraped the house and plastered it, the priest shall go in and make an inspection. If the disease has spread in the house, it is a spreading leprous disease in the house, it is unclean. He shall have the house torn down, its stones and timber and all the plaster of the house, and taken outside the city to an unclean place. All who enter the house while it is shut up shall be unclean until the evening. And all who sleep in the house shall wash their clothes, and all who eat in the house shall wash their clothes. Verse 48. If the priest comes and makes an inspection, and the disease has not spread in the house after the house was plastered, the priest shall pronounce the house clean. The disease is healed. For the cleansing of the house he shall take 2 birds with cedar wood and crimson yarn and hyssop, and shall slaughter one of the birds over fresh water in an earthen vessel, and shall take the cedar wood and the hyssop and the crimson yarn along with the living bird, and dip them in the blood of the slaughtered bird and fresh water, and sprinkle the house 7 times. Thus he shall cleanse the house with the blood of the bird, and with fresh water, and with the living bird, and with the cedar wood and hyssop and crimson yarn, and he shall let the living bird go out of the city into the open field, and so he shall make atonement for the house, and it shall be clean. So they don't think that the house was sinful and therefore needs to be atoned. So when we hear atonement, I mean, we Christians tend to think about atonement as getting right for sin. But atonement is a larger concept than that. Cleanliness before God is not sinning, but it's more than that. But we're trying to not have mold and mildew in our houses, which is a good thing. Verse 54, this is the ritual for any leprous disease, for an itch, for leprous diseases in clothing and houses, and for a swelling or an eruption or a spot, to determine when it is unclean and when it is clean. This is the ritual for leprous diseases. So that is the final little, here we are at the end of this whole thing that we had yesterday and today about dealing with leprosy, although not necessarily leprosy. Chapter 15, how much time do we have? Do we want to talk about bodily discharges? Chapter 15, the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, speak to the people of Israel and say to them, when a man has a discharge from his member, Hebrew actually uses the word flesh, when a discharge from his flesh, you know what that is. His discharge makes him ceremonially unclean. The uncleanness of his discharge is this: whether his member flows with his discharge or his member is stopped from discharging, it is uncleanness for him. Every bed on which the one with the discharge lies shall be unclean, and everything on which he sits shall be unclean. Anyone who touches his bed shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until the evening. All who sit on anything with which one with the discharge has sat shall wash his clothes. And I have a hair in my nose that's on my glasses. That's what it is. And it's, oh my gosh, just crazy. All who touch the body of the one with the discharge shall wash their clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until the evening. If the one with the discharge spits on persons who are clean, then they shall wash their clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until the evening. Why would somebody do that? I don't know. But now they have to go wash. Any saddle on which the one with the discharge rides shall be unclean. All who touch anything that was under him shall be unclean until the evening, and all who carry such a thing shall wash their clothes, and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. All those whom the one with the discharge touches without having rinsed his hands in water shall wash their clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until the evening. Any earthen vessel that the one with the discharge touches shall be broken, and every vessel of wood shall be rinsed in water. So unless, of course, the person washed his hands. But if he didn't wash his hands, then it's not good. And in ancient Israel, there were all kinds of these tubs, basically, called mikvahs, where people could go and bathe, because there's lots of rituals where you've had a discharge, you need to go take a bath. You need to go wash your clothes, and you need to bathe. Verse 13, when the one with the discharge is cleansed of his discharge, he shall count 7 days for his cleansing. He shall wash his clothes and bathe his body in fresh water, and he shall be clean. On the 8th day he shall take 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons, and come before the Lord to the entrance of the tent of meeting, and give them to the priest. The priest shall offer them, one for a sin offering, and the other for a burnt offering, and the priest shall make atonement on his behalf before the Lord for his discharge. So, just to be clear, all of that was not sex, because this next passage is about sex. So if you have some other kind of discharge, that's what we're just now talking about. I'm like, my gosh, every time you have sex, you're going to have to slaughter a sheep? No. That was for some odd, weird kind of discharge. Because now, verse 16, if a man has an emission of semen, he shall bathe his whole body in water, and be unclean until the evening. Everything made of cloth or of skin on which the semen falls shall be washed with water, and then be unclean until the evening. If a man lies with a woman and has an emission of semen, both of them shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. So the previous discussion, some kind of discharge that's other than semen, then there's all kinds of cleanliness, and you can't be touching. And sexual transmitted diseases are not new. So if you've got something going on down there, you're unclean and you need to get clean. If it's semen, you just got to go wash. Verse 19, when a woman has a discharge of blood, that is her regular discharge from her body. So this is not new. This has been going on forever. So just regular. She shall be in her impurity for 7 days, and whoever touches her shall be unclean until the evening. Everything upon which she lies during her impurity shall be unclean. Everything also upon which she sits shall be unclean. Whoever touches her bed shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. Whoever touches anything upon which she sits shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until the evening. Whether it is the bed or anything upon which she sits, when he touches it, he shall be unclean until the evening. If any man lies with her, and her impurity falls on him, he shall be unclean 7 days, and every bed on which he lies shall be unclean. So you have 7 days, and then you're clean again. But basically wash. Go wash. Go wash. And this is, we say that too. Go wash your hands and prevent the spread of germs, because germs are everywhere. Verse 25, if a woman has a discharge of blood for many days, not at the time of her impurity, or if she has a discharge beyond the time of her impurity, all the days of the discharge she shall continue in uncleanness, as in the days of her impurity she shall be unclean. Every bed on which she lies during all the days of her discharge shall be treated as the bed of her impurity, and everything on which she sits shall be unclean, as in the uncleanness of her impurity. Whoever touches these things shall be unclean, and shall wash his clothes, and bathe in water, and be unclean until the evening. If she is cleansed of her discharge, she shall count 7 days, and after that she shall be clean. On the 8th day she shall take 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons, and bring them to the priest at the entrance of the tent of meeting. The priest shall offer one for a sin offering, and the other for a burnt offering, and the priest shall make atonement on her behalf before the Lord for her unclean discharge. And they're not saying that because you had an unclean discharge, therefore you've sinned, but you do bring a sin offering for purification. And in the New Testament, Jesus is approached by a woman who sneaks in through a huge crowd. She's been bleeding for 12 years. So she has had uncleanness for 12 years. So she is, doesn't matter what she do, anybody who touches her has got to go wash. She is supposed to keep herself separate, but she goes into this big crowd and says, if I just touch the hem of Jesus's garment, then I'll get clean. And Jesus feels the power go out from him, stops and says, who touched me? And she doesn't want to admit it because she's unclean and she's embarrassed and she's poor because she's used all her money for all the doctors. But she has to come forward, and Jesus says, you are clean. You have been made clean. So because of this whole idea that when she's got discharge of any kind or blood that just keeps coming, and all kinds of modern things, we know now that that's probably PCOS, or if not PCOS, then maybe fibroids, some horrible kind of thing. And she's probably anemic because she has been losing blood for so many years. And Jesus made her clean. So, but we're going to wrap up this chapter, verse 31. Thus you shall keep the people of Israel separate from their uncleanness, so that they do not die in their uncleanness by defiling my tabernacle that is in their midst. This is the ritual for those who have a discharge, for him who has an emission of semen, becoming unclean thereby, for her who is in the infirmity of her period, for anyone male or female who has a discharge, and for the man who lies with the woman who is unclean. So the primary thing that they have to do is they have to go wash, and they're unclean until night. They have to wash their clothes, wash their sheets, and that is still very good practice to practice cleanliness. So now may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord look at you with favor and give you peace. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Go in peace. Serve the Lord. Thanks be to God. Have a great day.